Hello, welcome to Dungeons Podcast and Reels Justin. So after reading Wetworks, which was Image comic book series from the '90s, that got me nostalgic for other Image stuff like the cartoons and whatnot. So I decided to check out Gen 13, which is a movie from 1998. Though one site say it was from 2000. According to Google, it's from 1998. It's an animated action film that's an hour and 30 minutes long. It's directed by Kevin Altieri, who you'll know from he worked on the Batman the Animated Series, and he also was the animation director for the Pearl Jam. Was it Pearl Jam? I think it was Pearl Jam music video, "Do the Evolution." And this series is obviously based off an Image comic book series, but I guess since Jim Lee was one of the co-creators, when he went to DC, he probably sold it to them, right? Because apparently this movie gets called a DC Comics, a DC Comics film, and it's like, oh my god! And it's like even in the end of the credits, it says, based off the DC Comics books, and it's like, Jesus Christ. As far as I know, Gen 13 was originally an Image comic book, and apparently J. Scott Campbell did the artwork, but he was never. He did the artwork for the comic series, but he's not credited here. They credit like Jim Lee and like Brandon Choi, which is like, wow, man. J. Scott Campbell got no credit at all. Yeah. So basically, the film is basically X-Men ripoff. That's the problem with a lot of like Image books. They were like, they looked great, but then like a lot of the time the people that would write the books were the artists themselves, and that's the thing with the West, where like in Japan, like a lot of their mangakas are like are well rounded. They can write and draw. Where here, a lot of artists, they're not as good writers as artists, except for Rick Remender. I think he's a pretty good writer. Though, like, I miss his art. His art's actually not bad. If you ever read the Avengers from 2003, he did a couple issues from that run. So yeah, the cast for this movie is Mark Hamill. They actually have a really good cast here. You have Mark Hamill as Threshold. I'm not pronouncing that right, but whatever. You have John Lancie as Colonel John Lynch, John Lynch is basically the Nick Fury of the Image Comics universe. I guess he was sold off to a Wildstorm. You got Alicia. Oh, by the way, John Delancey was Q from Star Trek: Next Generation. For people who don't know, you have Alicia Witt as Caitlin Fairchild, one of the main characters of the film. Who she was in a movie called Urban Legend, and she was apparently in Twin Peaks, even though I have no idea who the hell she played on Twin Peaks. You got Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers as Edward Chang, aka Grunge. Flea. What funny thing about Red Hot Chili Peppers? I learned the other day that Anthony Kiedis had sex with Cher at a very young age. Holy fuck, man. That was. I hope that's not true, but yeah, he was very young when he got with Cher, which, boy, that's not good. You got E.G. Daily as Roxy Spaulding, who you'll know her. She played Tommy in Rugrats. You have Cloris Leachman as Helga. You'll know her from. She played the grandma on Malcolm in the Middle, and she was also in Beer Fest. If you've ever seen that film, and that's pretty much all the famous voice actors. So the story from this film, it's basically like a combination of Stephen King's Firestarter and X-Men, where like the movie starts off with this couple running away from military helicopters with two young children. One's a baby, which is Caitlin Fairchild, and the other one's Matthew, which is also his code name is Threshold, who's voiced by Mark Hamill. Obviously, though he didn't voice the kid version, and the mother gets gunned down by the helicopters. The man uses his psychic powers, his gen factor, to destroy one of the helicopters, but he gets so worn out that he's not able to defend himself from the other helicopter. He also gets gunned down. But before that, he hands the baby to Matthews, like the little brother, the older brother, and he tries to run away, but like falls into like a river, gets washed away, bashes one of his eyes out, but you don't really see the blood, though there's lots of blood in this film, and some ultra-violence. Not ultra-violence, but there's some violence in the film, and loses the baby in the water. That baby didn't die, but grows up to be Caitlin Fairchild, who's in college, getting sick of her whore roommate, who's always using the room that to have sex. So there's no nudity, but there's some TNA in this film, right? Especially during Caitlin Fairchild's transformation scene, where like I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, so like she gets after being sick of like of her whore roommate's behavior, she gets an offer from this man from the military who knew her father to join this facility where they train gifted children, all like young adults, right? And what is actually going on is they're being experimented on to activate their gen factors, which is like the superpowers. It's like the gen factor is like the equivalent of the mutant like gene from like X-Men, right? And one of the researchers is Threshold, which is Caitlin's older brother, though he doesn't know that. He thinks like he doesn't know that, right? And so yeah, there's also a woman that with a cyborg arm who looks kind of like she looks like a goth chick, man. She looks like the Enchantress from Justice League Unlimited. I think that was her name. I can't remember her name, but like, does anybody remember that witch chick with the purple hair and the like very very like slutty dress? That she's dressed the same, except she has like a robot arm with bladed cables that she can use as a whip. That's pretty cool, actually, in the fight scene or later on in the film. Yeah. So what ends up happening is they're training the kids to the young adults. They're all young adults. Like you have the Roxy who smokes, Edward Chang, aka Grunge, is like the slacker meathead, which I'm surprised that he doesn't smoke pot in this film. Which I wouldn't be surprised if that character smoked pot, which I actually didn't. I never read, like I said, I never read the Gen 13 comics. Apparently there's a fire guy in the comic book who's also a main character. Why he's not in the film, I don't know. Maybe because he was created by somebody else, or they wanted to focus on Caitlin to be the main character. So our characters get to know each other, and eventually shit happens where Caitlin learns that her father has superpowers, learns that that like she goes into a room that at night that has like the records of the Gen 12, which her father was a Gen 12. They even reference Team 7 in this movie, by the way, which that's another Image comic series, right? Which Wetworks was a spin-off of Team 7. So yeah, like she finds out about everything. Her and her friends uh, get ambushed by guards, and then Caitlyn's powers activate where she grows bigger and like she has like super strength. You even see her like her tits get bigger and like burst open her shirt, which that was a very almost would have been a sexy scene if it wasn't for the simplistic art style, which obviously since this movie was made by the guys who worked on like Batman the Animated Series, it has a very simplistic art style, which that's one of my problems with the movie, right? And then like other things. So their powers activate, and later on the other Roxy and Edward Chang's powers activate, where Edward Chang's powers are kind of similar to who was that one Colossus ripoff in X-Men 2099? Whatever. He's kind of like the Absorbing Man. That's another guy where he can touch metal or rock, and like his skin will like absorb that attribute, and he'll be covered in metal or rock. So it's like kind of like Colossus. Though Colossus had biometal, but whatever, it's the same thing. So like he has that power, and Roxy has basically Jean Grey's powers, where she has like telekinesis. So eventually, there's a face-off between Threshold and our characters. And Threshold, you see him in a costume, and it's like, holy shit! I mean, he has like a cape, and it's like he's very much like ripping off, like he very much comes off like a rip-off like Magneto, where he's floating, right? And like he has not only does he have mind-reading, telekinesis, and Genjutsu, where like he uses illusion on a guy and breaks one of his legs. So it's like, wow, dude, like this guy, he even generates like a energy beam with his psychic powers and uses it against Roxy, but she creates like a shield, right? And like eventually though, like John Lynch, who visited the facility, figures out that they're performing experiments, and he was one of the Gen 12. So he goes in there. He's with a fleet of like airships to attack the place and try to rescue the kids. He stumbles upon Caitlin Fairchild and her friends fighting Threshold. Shows up, tells them, "Hey, you guys need to stop. Your brother and sister, right?" And what ends up happening is they're on a rocky terrain, right? So like boulders fall off from a cliff and are about to follow them. They all get into a ship, but Threshold remains and this floats his sister into the air onto the helicopter, and he dies apparently. Why that guy would die when like he's very egotistical. He wanted the Gen 13 to take over humanity. He wanted to get revenge on the U.S. military. For some reason, I guess he just wants to die after he finds out like, oh, he almost killed his sister or whatever. And then the movie ends with John Lynch giving the kids like an offer to become superheroes, right, and work for him at IO, which is called International Operations in the comic books, but they just call them Eternal Operations, which is like, why the change there? I don't know. Maybe for legal reasons. Who knows? Because obviously, when they probably brought over that character, they probably had to. It could have been like Image Comics had came up with International Ops, but they didn't come up with the John Lynch character, so they probably had to change the name for legal reasons or whatever, right? Which, you know, Image Comics is a cluster fook when it comes to like legal rights for shit. Which is why a lot of their like crossovers suck, because everybody owns their rights for their own characters, and like obviously, you know, like that kind of fucks up with shit getting fucked up with, you know, like people have to get paid residuals and shit for using characters and whatnot in books. And then there's obviously the fact that like, nobody wants to kill off their characters, even though you could just bring them back, but whatever. Like, yeah, that's why, that was one of the reasons why Image Comics never, their whole superhero universe never got to, never rose to the level of DC Comics and Marvel Comics. That and the fact that a lot of the writers and artists there were their own bosses, and when you're your own boss, there's nobody breathing down your neck to release shit, and like, you know, release shit in a rapid, like, you know, fashion. So like, yeah, books would come out late and shit, and yeah, that's why like a lot of franchises that were super popular and were gaining like gain traction to become movies and TV shows never happened, because they took too long to produce shit, and their fandom didn't stick around, right? Which is why Comicsgate is in the film, in my opinion. That and they're shameless grifters. Like Ethan Van Sciver was like, I'm gonna produce a fan magazine for Cyberfrog. It's like Cyberfrog only has one book. Oh my god. The guy's trying to make toys and magazines for like a franchise that only has like one graphic novel. Oh, maybe put out the comics first. Yeah, so like, yeah, my problem with the movie is if the movie tries to be edgy, I think they didn't go far enough. Why tease TNA when you can just have TNA? Because there is swearing in this film. They use the S word shit frequently. You have characters smoking. Right, there's implied sex in the film. They might as well have gone away and had the nudity, since like, you know, they were teasing it, for fuck's sakes. And these are adult characters, so there's nothing creepy about that, right? At least Caitlin Fairchild was, you know, since she was in college. Though they never said like who her uncle was, because yeah, she had apparently an uncle that like took care of her. Who that was, I have no idea. But yeah, like my problem with the film is that I thought they reused some of the same powers a lot. You have like half the superheroes in this film have either like super strength or psychic powers, man. Like they couldn't come up with more variety or that. They probably should have had the fire guy from the comic books in this film. Or if they couldn't use him, just rip him off, just change it enough so you don't get sued. Yeah. So yeah, honestly, dude, in my opinion, this film is not that great. And whatever copies you can find online, this movie is probably out of print. It is very low resolution. Like the one I saw looked like it was like 380 or some shit. 380, maybe 420. I don't fucking know. You're gonna have a hard time watching this in HD or DVD quality. Yeah. But like besides from that, yeah, I thought if you're a fan of superhero films or superhero comics, this was all right. Though I thought the Star Wars references in the film was cringe. Like, was that shit? Was that shit even there before? Like, you know, it was a shoo-in that Mark Hamill was joining the cast. I have no idea. Also, I thought the voice acting was great, except for Flea, but I have no idea if that's Flea's fault or the way the character's written. I had no idea. But yeah, that's if I were to give this movie a rating, I would say, you know, for the time, this movie probably would have been at least a 6.5 out of 10. So you kind of have to rate stuff. Yeah, I would say it's a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah. Because if I had watched this, because if I would have been like a kid in like 98, 2000, I probably, if I had saw this as a kid, I probably would have thought this was cool and would have begged my parents to go to the comic book shop to buy these comics. Which I am going to the comic book shop tomorrow for free comic book day. So yeah. Hopefully I can find some Gen 13. Alright guys, peace.